Hi, everyone. So this is Dave Kessler. My podcast is The Architect's Guide, and I'm gonna share today a slideshow I've given a number of places um, in my teaching, which is explicating this theory I have on architecture's mimesis, and I hope you enjoy it. And so I'm going to share right now and go to my slideshow. And yes, this is for introducing myself. I have 30 years of experience as an architect, master's in architecture from Columbia University, bachelor's in architecture from Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, where I saw the B-52s play in a small Halloween party. Taught architectural design studios for many years at the college level. I've also taught lighting design, architectural software. I'm an industrial designer, watercolor, and musician of sorts. So this guy here is a whole bunch of artificial intelligence prompts, but it's very close to the way that I believe architecture should be designed. And this is one of my many watercolors where I could easily talk about the emotional qualities of what feels good when I'm doing geometric drawings. But I do think that I'm tying into something deeper here, which is a kind of universal geometric system. And there's a certain kind of tessellation of form here, like cellular automata, etc., growth patterns. And I'm demonstrating how my architecture is both influenced by nature and attempting to moderate or fit into nature in certain ways, which I think is fundamental to how we are in the world, how humans are in the world. As opposed to emulating, could talk about this for a few more minutes, as opposed to emulating the history of architecture, which is one way of this idea of the mimetic. I'm actually trying to get into essences and understandings of the natural world, almost in a scientific manner, and then just attempting to translate, my limited understanding of the sciences. I'm trying to translate my understanding of growth systems, of how things dwell in the world in a more natural way into geometric form. So this kind of twirl pattern is emulating a growth system. I think part of my AI prompts were probably to mimic plant growth, etc. And this is a certain kind of vision of how I ultimately see cities, quite frankly, where we're very extremely interwoven with nature. So I'm going to move on here a little bit, and let's see. See, architecture as a mimetic discipline at its best is ultimately a personal historical lens by which to understand the evolution of art and architecture. My point here is that there are myriad ways of seeing history. The hope is that the student will evolve their own lens or series of lenses by which to analyze and understand history. I do believe, however, that it remains extremely difficult to contemplate escaping nature. We are certainly at the moment fully integrated with the Earth, within the wider solar system, and within the universe as a whole. Our design evolution is as much determined by our condition in the physical world as we believe we may determine the physical world. The argument is that the more intensely we analyze the physical world and seek to abstract it, the more our design work can teach and move us forward. And I've once again posted general imagery supports the prevalence of mimetic work and architecture radically separated from historical precedent. Yeah, that's pretty close. Growth would seem to be a condition of the universe. As such, I believe we're all of us on a trajectory to become one with our machines. We are indeed already integrated somewhat with our mobile devices, our laptops, and by extension, our social media profiles. Television shows are now one after another proposing digital life after death and virtual worlds limitless in their mimetic potential. So here's a few more of my watercolor painting on the left, and I scanned it into an AI application and then turned it to glass. I do all sorts of experiments like this where I'm trying to translate my kind of emotive way of growing a painting into architectural form. And what I'm doing here is I'm kind of creating flowering of shape. I'm allowing color to manifest how that flowering occurs. And this particular resolution again is coming from an initial watercolor painting where I'm really playing with geometry, with the a kind of highly abstracted asymmetric geometry that is connected and grows in various ways. I have all sorts of themes that I use in my painting. This is a kind of vertical theme, spinal theme, and then these are twirling around that central spine. And then the way these things open are almost reactive to what I'm feeling, or where they're placed, or reacting to some other geometry that I created. Whoops. So here we go. Like this is my version of the power of what mimesis can really be. And I think it now, again, this is with respect to um, artificial intelligence, with respect to continually geometrically evolving computer technologies, compute, as they say. I think that we are always and always have been trying to copy um, the natural world and the earth in so many ways. So, for instance, I teach my students that my understanding, I make a distinction. It may be overly simplistic, but it's one way I understand it. I make a distinction between Plato and Aristotle in the following way: that Plato developed these ideas associated with the fact that all art is imitation. And when on the surface, when I was younger, I used to say, oh, that what I make is original, you know. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that that is simply not the case. As soon as you open your eyes as a child, you are copying. So the first thing we copy arguably is the smile of our mother, or the facial expression of whoever is looking at us. And it's for those who are not sighted or don't have hearing, it could be touch, for that matter. I mean, whatever stimuli we interact with, we would eventually make an attempt to copy and emulate. So going over this, then the mimetic strands that I can begin to talk about, a very popular one is the biological. So using growth systems found in the natural world, such as tessellation, cellular automata, aging, innate organizational systems such as swarming or flocking birds, disease trajectories. These are all components that I would argue humankind, from the dawn of consciousness, has been in some way trying to emulate other systems. As soon as consciousness comes into play, we try to um, uh, uh, design our own structures and to understand the world by way of copying things that we see in the environment and trying to slightly improve upon them. Um, to the extent that evolution occurs in everything, that may be occurring in everything. That given a long enough time, perhaps all animals evolve to and progress in various ways. I think they're already starting to prove that in the work that people have done on other primates like chimpanzees, where they see tool usage beginning to evolve, that type of thing. And I would argue that that is fundamental to anything that's living and breathing, and certainly anything that is conscious. So biological, using growth systems found in the natural world, such as tessellations, building, those are mosaics, building things that assemble to create other things. Phenomena such as wind, ocean currents, ice formation, heat, gravity, the weather, astrophysics, light, time, the subatomic and the astronomic. So again, I think that, you know, living sentient things that are perhaps not as self-conscious as we are doing this anyway. I think that there is a reaction of things like birds and insects and wildlife to storm phenomena. So given the gifts that the human being has, this cognitive revolution that Yuval Harari has referred to in his most recent writing, we we are able to go on top of an understanding of this kind of phenomena that other animals are more a part of, more experienced, more wholly and unconsciously experiencing. We actually can start to translate in all our arts, and certainly into our sciences. So let me back up and also say that one of the ways of understanding where I'm going with this is that there have been writings describing different civilization types. So if I look up here I'm look on my phone with you right now, and I look up the Kardashev scale. So the Kardashev scale is a method of measuring civilizations, and it's a method of measuring civilization's level of technological advancement based on the amount of energy it is capable of harnessing and using. The measure was proposed by Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev, 1932 to 2019, in 1964, and was named after him. The scale is hypothetical and refers to the energy consumption on a cosmic scale. Various extensions of the scale have been proposed, including a wider range of power levels and the use of metrics other than pure power. So to cut to the chase here, the type 1 civilization is able to access all the energy available on its planet and store it for its consumption. Hypothetically, it should also be able to control natural events such as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, etc. Type 2 civilization can directly consume a star's energy, most likely through the use of a Dyson sphere, something surrounding a star system that literally is getting almost direct solar energy and then projecting to various planets or what have you. Type 3 civilization is able to capture all the energy emitted by its galaxy and every object within it, such as every star, black hole, etc. And when I've heard other physicists talk about this, when I've heard physicists, I'm an architect, type 2 civilization is equivalent to perhaps Star Trek. Our civilization is about 0.7 of a type 1 civilization, which means that maybe in another 100 years or so, we might be absolutely a type 1 civilization, total control over all the energy that is produced on this planet. Maybe it's a couple 100 years, but we are geometrically evolving, and that's very possible. A type 4 civilization is able to use such energy, which is comparable to the power of the entire universe. So type 3 again is able to capture all the energy emitted by its galaxy, every object within it, black hole. That's the Death Star in Star Wars. That's one of the metaphors that's used. So we are in this very primitive way here. We are what I'm suggesting is that part of the way we evolve is through how we make dwellings and how we understand how we live in this environment, right? So if we are going to project ourselves into a type 1 civilization, then we arguably will eventually develop an architecture that is almost fully interwoven with the world that we live in. In that sense, we are not destroying the world we live in. We are reinforcing the world we live in. I think that we're at the dawn of that too. If we can, we have a lot of work to do, but I mean, the idea of really thinking deeply about how we use the oceans, just as an example. The United States is a recent article I just read in the New York Times today, actually, was arguing that we use, the United States uses the oceans better than almost any other country right now. And that's increased the amount of money that can be made from fishing. It's actually made it better economically. It's made by being more environmentally intelligent. It's actually resulted in more profits for the same companies that were destroying the oceans. So there is it's a win-win, and we have to fit. We are getting smarter. It's very slow. Um, Absolutely. I hope we don't destroy ourselves with nukes or through climate change before we can fix this place. But that is where we're at right now. We understand that we have to fix our environment. We have to get closer to how we integrate with Mother Nature. And we are at the dawn of understanding how to do this. That's what's behind all this. So chemistry, the interaction of one element upon another, the interaction of molecules upon other molecules, erosionary forces, explosive forces. This is using deep metaphor. Let's say that the biological biomimesis is at the surface. That's the surface of what mimesis can do. As you start diving into the sciences, it gets more and more interesting. So you could do chemistry, interaction of one element upon another. Geomimesis, the use of an analysis of geological forces in the creation of architectural work. Analysis of rock formations and seismicity, volcanism, planet formation. Geomimesis could include how you resist nuclear war, for instance. So again, all of these kind of go forward and back out. The biological biomimesis can include how you design buildings fully off the grid, almost a living energy system that you are living in. I consider this type of thinking absolutely potentially capable of producing the most beautiful buildings. Absolutely, in terms of any kind of prosaic understanding of beauty. So the most serenely inspiring buildings. Look, when I go to Tuolumne Meadows to rock climb, I'm overwhelmed how beautiful the granite and the trees are. I'm a at this point I'm a more than convinced Californian in terms of the unique and gorgeous beauty of this great state of California. And it's reinforced every time I go to Tuolumne Meadows, if not Yosemite, of course. And so what is the thinking there? The thinking is that nature provides by far the greatest architecture, by far, in so many different ways when nature is healthy. So a coral reef, which and the argument here is that the architect of these environments is in Yosemite, for instance, is millions and millions of years old. Millions. It's impossible for the human being to conceive of the complexity that Mother Nature can perform upon the hardest of materials, given millions and millions of years, many human lifetimes. So physics, chemistry, keep thinking of what it really means, not just the surface, but what it really means to understand the sciences. This goes down so many levels. There's so many levels. It's infinite, really. It is infinite. So what we are trying to do is create living buildings. That's the deal here, living buildings. Now, as I go forward and backward, and you really play with this system, you can do things like, I have here urbano-mimesis, the understanding that cities themselves may transcend the human lifetime and become almost organic entities in and of themselves. No question, no question. But even though you could argue that this may be way at the surface because you're looking at human artifact, but there is, again, as you go deep into simply what cities mean culturally, and you start to understand the depths of how they evolve, that can absolutely catch and get deeper and deeper in terms of whatever project you're contemplating or however we interact with that environment. So I'll also back out here and say that all of this is for all of us. So I do think that the digital arts are unifying everything, and that we are becoming, as we become arguably a more type 1 civilization, there is a universal quality to how all the different intellectual disciplines work together. So, we are yoga. And architecture is yoga, or architecture is chemistry, and chemistry is architecture. And a building could be angry or sad, as a human can be, as the ocean can be. You can start crossing over the entire planet in terms of a depth of understanding about how to truly interweave and fit into a system like this. Okay. So all the mimetic strands start with surface observation. They all begin as kitsch, as hyperreality. That's the surface. If you're going to make a table that looks like a mushroom, that's kitsch. That's called Disneyland. But if you really start to get into what mushrooms do, mycelium, how they all communicate, how the insect world understands fungus and uses fungus, or how the root systems of forests communicate over miles and miles. So that's way underneath kitsch or hyperreality. Kitsch is more real than real. It's a fake real almost. Las Vegas is classic kitsch. The Eiffel Tower is taken out of Paris and thrown into the Nevada desert. That's kitsch, right? So all these mimetic strands start as kitsch. That's the surface without a whole lot of thinking. Mushroom table at Disneyland looks just like a mushroom. So forms the basis of a new kind of spatial experience through the abstraction of the phenomena. Okay. So you can keep going. Psychomimesis, mathomimesis, digiomimesis. So let's look at this. Psychomimesis: moods, happy, sad, pensive, angry, confused, clear, other conditions, and the huge spectrum of neurological environmental conditions. Once again, at the top, can you design a crazy building? Sure. Plenty of crazy looking modern buildings. But you can also try to get into how a building can create mood in a very technical manner and go deeper and deeper and deeper. Happy, sad, angry, confused. To what extent can you really let that resonate into how we dwell in the environment again? And this could, and another comment that comes to mind is that this isn't simply about buildings that are separated out from the environment that they're in. I actually like buildings even in cold environments. I often like getting that breath of fresh air. And so this entire system can be used to create parks. And as I talk about a certain kind of interweaving, I'm interested in buildings that are kind of indoor and outdoor and fully interwoven. So what does that mean again? I'll go back to this, to this little, that this is something you could dwell in, that I'm working with the landscape. And I had this other one is very much about that. that it's both almost seamless, that the boundary is almost seamless between what the architecture is and what the environment around it is, that they sustain each other. So we may only be a couple hundred years from now. Who knows? We may be 1,000 years from now. But to me, that's ultimately a type 1 civilization architecture. Okay, so a lot again, musical mimesis, translation and adherence to invented or copied orchestration of music. However, the universe has notes. The universe has a sound, and the depths of what sounds are. There are sounds that are very good for meditation. There are sounds that are more jarring. So you look at any of these, the use of an imagined future. So science fiction has always been an influence on architects, right? Bibliomimesis, the use and interpretation that's a misspell of religious texts as source material for form. Cultural mimesis, critique of cultural evolution and expression. Hip hop architecture is an exciting version of this, for instance, recent version of this. And again, this goes on. Could you have heavy metal architecture? Of course you can. Can you have folk architecture? Yeah, folk music architecture. Yeah. But it's not only that. Can you have can you have an extension of various translation of religions into architecture? Well, that's been happening for since the dawn of religions. But you can have hip hop's maybe a little more New York, right? You could have a redwood architecture for California, but it just goes way deeper than any of this into individual cultural expression, et cetera. Industrial mimesis, using the products of industrial design. That's again looking at other surface manufactured, materials. So can you make a building that is a car, that is a Tesla or something? Cybertruck building, of course you can. Of course you can. Those are the surface interpretations. But as you get down deep into industrial manufacturing, you can start thinking about robotic buildings, et cetera. So all of these different components are critical to opening up the mind to creating work. So as I close here, I'll talk some more about this. There are reductive mimetic strands. Neoclassicism using design methodologies of prior generations and other minds. Neoclassicism generally refers specifically to the elevation and direct copying of the classical orders as evolved from the Greek origins, temples and seats of government through the Roman Empire period. Yet this reductive mimetic strand also can embody the neo-primitive and the anti-technological. So I'm not, even though, again, I'm arguing that there's a certain kind of reductive quality that it holds back innovation. And I think many modernists of my age would probably say that. There's also positive components to opening the mind. That's my argument here, to open the mind to the history of this reality that we're in. Hyper-reality, most prevalent in post-war United States, Disneyland, Las Vegas, most dominant examples. Phenomena spread around the world. Iconic architectural forms are repeated and translated. That's another misspell over there. Hyper-reality is often unconscious, but just as often is directly associated with capitalism and its commodification of the popular. So the argument here is that architects manipulate the products of corporations at this point. And at the surface, that's what we do. And much as I love everything about architecture, my opportunities for whatever limitations I have been often limited to the creation of fairly, boxy homes where I'm not in a position where I can really invent everything that I'd like to invent for that home. And the argument there, perhaps at one extreme, is the historical example of Frank Lloyd Wright. And when you look at a lot of the top architects today, whether it be Bjarke Ingels or maybe a little Bjarke Ingels I could put on one side, but I could talk about Frank Gehry, who's now in his 90s, and Zaha Hadid, who's passed, as architects that really generally did try to push the invention of many things in the building, to be so custom in the way they approach their buildings that they actually could touch the furniture. But the level at which that is done is been minimized, and certainly for most architects, where you could argue in the 17th century, for instance, architectural possibilities were less. But when the architects did get to design, they were generally providing a full range of possibility. But again, I think when I think about that, I think that the height of it probably is someone like Frank Lloyd Wright, who really tried to touch virtually every component and really was a one-off designer where his products were custom made as opposed to manufactured by corporations. And then again, where we are today is that architects largely manipulate the products of corporations, and the ability to create innovative form is just very limited. So the use of architecture to dominate one political system over another, one race over another, one ethnicity, culture over another, one sex over another. So hegemonic form is generally intertwined with neoclassicism. So I probably no, and then I go into some other things. So to the extent that hegemonic form reinforces neoclassicism, you could see that in Hitler's Germany. That's a classic example with Albert Speer. And in general, with the degree to which totalitarian regimes often are choosing classical Roman architecture, versions of Roman architecture to announce a dominance of the governing body over the people. So these again, I think identifying them as reductive systems is helpful, and I think ultimately they can be mined to try to innovate, and then using something, being aware of the possibility of mimesis to bring richness to your architecture is really where I think the most power of this system is available to us. Okay. So I'll leave it there now and stop the share. And thank you. Talk to you soon.